stop to cross. So that's the first thing. I think that's something that's been useful. But the second thing is going back to what I just said about desired crossings. Part of it is making that the crossing. If the community members, even if they're kids, at a certain point, if they naturally are intending to cross at a certain place, then we need to accommodate that in some way. And I think that while traffic calming measures on Colesville Road may not be the best solution because the traffic there is already ridiculous, I do think that we can examine different ways to stop all of the crossings, and I think that's how we cut down on pedestrian accidents, because they're tending to happen during a certain time of day, so lighting isn't necessarily going to be the answer, but I do believe that just paying attention to what the pedestrians are doing, that's what's going to solve the problem.
This question is near and dear to me because my husband and I live in Indian Spring, and between the two of us we only have one car. And so on weekends, I will normally walk up to Starbucks right here in Woodmore, go to the Woodmore Bakery, and on a nice evening, we'll go to Red Maple. And what it means is that I walk the walk when it comes to pedestrian safety. When I was in downtown Silver Spring, head of that civic association, I helped implement pedestrian safety measures because we had thousands of people, much like here, who were living in a community that was unsafe. And so along East-West Highway, we had some pedestrian safety measures put in. And the problem that we face, be it here on University or on Colesville, these are state highways. So the SHA is usually, the State Highway Administration is usually an impediment. And so I've been fighting the State Highway Administration to try and make Silver Spring a safer place for pedestrians. And some of the ways that we've done that is by changing the lights on the crosswalks. If you were to keep the red light red for about 5 seconds longer, and you let the crosswalk go, the little walk signal go, people will start entering the crosswalk, and then the car drivers, the drivers will have a green light, and people will already be in the middle of the crosswalk. Those are simple ways that we can increase the pedestrian safety around here, but it's fighting the State Highway Administration.
The first thing I would do is ask State Highway to do an assessment of pedestrian safety and what solutions are available. And I would rely on the experts and planners that bring in, I don't know if we're going to set the policy here, but there's an absolute opportunity to improve this because there's a new administrator of the State Highway Administration who's been very accessible and responsive and very good. Melinda Peters, who was the planner of the ICC project and is really based and familiar with Montgomery County, unlike Neil Peter, who was very unresponsive for many, many years when he ran the agency. We also need a complete streets policy. US 29 was not planned with the interests of bicyclists and pedestrians in mind. All our streets need to be planned that way, and US 29 should be reconfigured in that direction. Let me give you an example of why we need a council member with the experience and the relationships at State Highway and MDOT to get things done and not take no for an answer. At Quaint Acres in New Hampshire, they have a beautiful new four-way stoplight now. And they have that after that association has been trying to get a stoplight for 20 years. I found out about it 3 years ago when Darian Unger over here was the head of the Silver Spring Civics Advisory Board and invited me in to hear from pedestrians who were concerned about two relatives of presidents of the Civic Association who've been hit by cars trying to cross the street there. I was told no by State Highway. I escalated it to MDOT. I was told no by them. I escalated it to the governor. And 3 years later now, we just installed that full stoplight because we need that demonstrates why you need a council member who won't take no for an answer and has the relationships and the know how to get things done. Thank you.
So I've got some experience with this because when Northwood High School opened up, I don't know if you all remember how difficult the traffic pattern was when it first opened up. It was a disaster. Almost every morning there was an accident. Back then, and I think that was around 2007, I worked with Marilyn Praisner and worked with the council, in fact, to get them to work with SHA to redesign the traffic pattern, to make sure that, in fact, we could get folks coming in the morning, because the reality is the difficulty, if you think about the question, the issues, we have 5,000 students in this area who are running back and forth. They're doing it usually in the morning, in the afternoon. They're doing it in the morning when school starts. They're doing it when school's out. And to some extent, you see it happening at lunchtime. there needs to be some coordination between State Highway Association, the high school, Renee Johnson, the principal at Blair, and then working with the council to see what we can do. We possibly could have an officer out there, okay? The other issue with that is that we have to do that in a way that lets the teens know we're trying to keep them safe. Because unfortunately, I have teenagers and I know how they can act and they can feel invincible and run across streets and not pay attention, but that really ends up creating more problems. So I think one of the issues is figuring out how to do it with our SROs, to do it with the principal of the schools, and also to do it with State Highway, and really sit down and figure out, and bring the kids in, and let them understand that they're part of the issue. Because I think what we don't do is a lot of times we don't talk to the kids and help them to understand what impact they may be having on the community they either go to school in or live in.
I'm still here. One of the things that I grew up with in Gary, Indiana was what we call the barn-style crossing. And what barn-style crossing is where all traffic comes to a stop and it allows pedestrians to go in the various directions. I believe that that would be a great asset to the community, especially for our seniors. We have a lot of senior citizens that are still wanting to be mobile and they're still wanting to be active. And if we gave them the ample time to cross the road in the barn-style crossing, the traffic would automatically know that it's not my time to go. And another thing that we could also look to do, I'm not familiar, and I won't pretend as if I am. I'm not as familiar with the State Highway Administration as Mr. Hucker is, which is another reason why you should stay in the state delegation. We need him there. We need him in Annapolis. Mr. Barclay, we need him at the school board so he can make the meetings with the students. All right? But one of the things that I would look to do is bring in pedestrian overpasses. It may be a hard sell to get the State Highway Administration to come in and reconfigure traffic patterns, but maybe, hi, there's Eileen, I didn't even see her sitting there. I'm sorry, Eileen. I'm sorry. One of the things that I really think that we can do without too much of a problem is to put in overpasses, because it was an atrocity to have the gentleman killed up on Tech Road. If we would have had the barn-style crossing there, or maybe even extend the lights a little bit, because I tell the citizens, the seniors, as I talk to them, it's a crosswalk, not a cross-run. So maybe we can extend the time a little bit more.
All right, pass the mic back up to Mr. Bloss. We're moving into transit. The Four Corners neighborhoods have fought for years for better bus and pedestrian facilities, including bus shelters, while also fighting against the bus service cutbacks in our neighborhood that occurred in 2008 and were never restored. In spite of those cutbacks, 40% of all commuter trips from Four Corners are by something other than single occupancy vehicle mode. So transit is important to us. So, given that the latest reports for the Silver Spring Transit Center are not good, and the latest study ordered by the county executive states that the public would be in danger of falling chunks of concrete, it looks like that situation may be dragging on for a while. So, we have 2 lightning round questions on that, and then 1 question that'll be a 2-minute question. So, first lightning round. In the meantime, while the county litigates the matter with contractors, will you support actions that would decrease disruption for commuters, such as having a path put in across the green space for those walking from the buses and garages to the metro station? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. Second part question. As a council member, would you support requiring that the engineer certify that the facility is safe before it is open to the public? Okay. All right. Now for a 2-minute question. What lessons can be drawn from the Silver Spring Transit Center debacle, and how can those lessons be applied to proposals for future projects? Mr. Bloss.
We need somebody on the council who actually will provide oversight on public projects. You know, the fact that we have 4 or 5 council members, depending on how you count, who live within walking distance of the Silver Spring Transit Center and let it get into this mess is a sad state of oversight. Because as a former journalist, I know that the number one function of the legislative body is to provide oversight and the budget. And for not one member of the council to ask the tough questions in public when it was one dime and 1 day delayed, one dime over budget, is a travesty, quite frankly. And so, as your next council member, I will provide oversight not only on the transit center, because quite frankly, this election will come and go before I believe that transit center will be fixed, and on every public project thereafter. You need people who are going to keep asking the tough questions, because in the end, it's taxpayer money. And this is a complicated situation with the transit center. It's everybody's fault. When the county cannot put together good enough plans that are built and it's poorly done, and then adding insult to injury, the developer creates concrete that's unstable. The reason it is not open is because everybody's culpable. And the lawyers are having a field day. And so no one wants to show their cards. And who's paying the price? We are. Everybody who takes the bus and takes the metro, like I do, we're paying the price. And eventually, I'm hoping that we don't have to pay the price when the price tag comes in. So in the end, we need members on the council who are going to provide oversight. And I think the journalist who used to cover Congress for CNN is just that person.
The problems in the Silver Spring Transit Center didn't start with the Silver Spring Transit Center. You all have been paying attention long enough to know we have a long history of cost overruns and delays on almost every major construction project in Montgomery County. Now, why is that? And I'm not saying I know all the answers, but I know a few of them. One is we have very little competition for a lot of these big, expensive bids. We have the same contractors doing the work over and over and over, even when they performed bad work in the past. We saw Strathmore go over budget, we saw Fillmore go over budget, downtown Silver Spring, many major projects you all remember have been delayed, and the Silver Spring Transit Center is, the worst we've seen, but it's not the first. We need more competition, and we need contracts written in a way that draw in more competition, so you don't just have these mega developers who are the ones who are able to do it. We need much more accountability written into the contracts. If you look at the Washington National Stadium, for example, that was written on it, done with a project labor agreement, the risk was put on the developer. It was a much larger, much more complicated project, but it had to be done on time and on budget for opening day for the Washington Nationals, or things would be very embarrassing, and it was, because the contractor accepted the responsibility to avoid delay and get it done on time. The final thing is we need, obviously, much more transparency. The public's not engaged in these matters. The council holds just a whiff of hearings on major projects. We need much more council accountability, and much more oversight. That's why we need experience on the county council, and I hope you'll vote for me. Thank you.
So, wow, the transit center, that's a lot of fun. Let me just say that as somebody who has experience as a project manager, I come from telecom, did a lot of work on pretty large projects. One thing that has to happen is you've got to ask the right questions. And that didn't happen over and over and over again. And I agree with my colleagues, if you will, that there needs to be much more oversight. But the issue is you have to do it in a timely manner, because if you don't ask the right questions, and if you ask the questions too late, it doesn't matter. They've committed. So one of the things is designs, and this project was what was called a design build, as in the design was not completed, then brought to a structural engineer before things were moving forward. That was a problem. As somebody on the school board who has to deal with more than $250 million in capital projects annually, we could never let that happen with our schools. There is no way we could have schools not open on time or be structurally deficient. It cannot happen. But the way that happens is you have to have folks in the right place who ask very good questions and don't let projects move forward until you have clear answers. That's the responsibility of the council, but the other part is you've got to make sure that the staff that's working on this does it, and it's not necessarily a great thing for the county to be the general contractor, okay? That can be really dangerous. That's why you see MCPS has never been the general contractor. We make sure that we hire a general contractor and work with them. So it's about asking the right questions, being timely, and really ensuring that you know what's going on before you move forward with the project.
I met with him in November of last year. I'm frustrated, you all. I am very, very frustrated because the same song and dance has been given to us for too long. It's been given to us too long, and they expect us to keep eating it over and over and over again. When he resigned, when his term was up as president of the school board, his statement to me was, I'm glad I don't have to work with these adults that should be able to handle their own business. So do you think that he's going to go to the county council and get the real answers to the questions that we deserve? I think that we should cover Mr. Sarbanes' name up on that transit center until we fix it. It's a disgrace to the family for whoever comes into Silver Spring to see Mr. Sarbanes' name displayed on a failure. I was the only one that held my card up and said, no, I would not put a path through that green space to create a path for people to walk through, because if you give a little, they'll take a lot. If you create a path, you will say that something is acceptable to us, so much so that we will be willing to put more money in creating a path. But we got to hold our ground now. We've already drawn the line in the sand and said it's unacceptable in the current form. All portions of it is unacceptable, so we cannot take that fence down from around where it's at and put a path through it, because we would have accepted a portion of it. If we accept a portion, they'll make us accept a little bit more. Then they'll make us accept a little bit more. And then before you realize it, they'll be telling you that, hey, I got an eye on the building. It's okay to go in while your car is getting smashed by the concrete that just fell. All is well. Don't worry about it. I know the State Highway Administration, and one of my 25 endorsers, they're going to ensure that your car is there when it returns, but they're not going to tell you that's going to be flattened. I'm tired, guys. You should be tired too. The questions that you're asking, the responsibility that you're requesting, it will not be given by these ones that's pretending to be the experts.
Pass the mic back up, please, Mr. Norton.
Sure. It's 2 minutes?
Two, yes.
Your timekeeper knows. Good. And actually, I'm glad he knows. What I'm going to talk about is delegation, essentially. The problem that happened with this project is that the county, the people who are supposed to be doing the oversight are just too close to specific developers. And I think there are two solutions to that, and I get this mainly from my day job. My day job is I advise the Navy on environmentally sensitive shipbuilding, so using hybrid electric engines, building from composite materials, and using biofuels. Either way, my job is to explain to Congress when we have cost overruns on billion-dollar ships. So we try our best not to have cost overruns that are on these billion-dollar ships. The way we do that is by extensive oversight. We hire people who are experts in performing the oversight. And that's really where the first part of this answer comes from. You know, we have to, council members aren't the experts, and our staff members aren't necessarily going to be the experts in what's going to happen with a transit center. Because the transit center has become our big dig. Those of you who have ever been to Boston, you know what the big dig is. And the way that we have to have someone we have to have a council member, one, who's focused on asking the tough questions, like Evan said. And the second piece of it, we have to put some mechanisms in place. Sorry, put my teeth in. Put some mechanisms in place to ensure that we're injecting competition. So what the Navy does, for example, is we only work with 2 to 3 manufacturers for all of the ships that we build across the country, but we artificially inject competition into the ranks by splitting who builds what, putting different manufacturers in charge of building different parts of the ship. So I think that's part of the answer here as well. We need to study the problem a little bit more and come up with actual mechanisms where we inject competition so that Volter Pratt knows they can't just put one over on us, which is essentially what's happening right now.
All right, pass it down to Mr. Hucker. Since 2008, the local transit service in the Four Corners area has been cut back in favor of express service to outlying communities. The proposed BRT would continue this process and require local residents to either take an additional bus to a BRT station that might be 2 miles away or wait for a regular bus on a reduced schedule. All right, so this is a 1.5-minute question, and Mr. Hucker will lead us off. What would you propose to maintain or improve bus service for residents on the BRT routes who will be watching the BRT go by while they wait at the local bus stop?
Well, that's a loaded question, Karen. I would avoid that scenario entirely. I don't support building BRT on the backs of our current Ride-On and Metro bus, first of all, and Metro Rail. I strongly believe that, let me start at the beginning. Glenn hasn't raised his hand yet. I'm paranoid about this. I'm a big transit supporter. I'm a Purple Line supporter in particular. I'm the co-chair of the caucus in the General Assembly. I've been a big transit supporter for a long time. The best investment of our transit dollars is improving the transit that we have, not the transit of the future. We do a lot of happy talk about building transit that gets people out of their cars and makes people ride transit. Unfortunately, we have a transit system that's largely ridden by people without options and without cars. We need to build a transit system that attracts people that have options and have cars. If you ride the 16th Street bus, the S Street in DC, it's full of people that have cars and have options, but it's a high-quality product. We need high-quality, reliable, and frequent bus service. Ride-On and Metro bus service, number one. We need to improve the quality of experience as well. Our bus stops look like bus stops in rural Mexico. They're a metal sign with mud underneath. We need benches, shelters. In Minneapolis and Chicago, they have heaters. We need everything to improve that quality experience so people can think, why do I want to sit in my car in traffic? I can get on a quality bus. And I think the best way to develop some data to show if we want to see BRT in the future is to implement the Priority Corridors program of the Metro, which allows buses to go around cars and hold the green light open a little bit longer so we can see whether that drives the ridership up and whether people with options will continue to ride quality buses. Thank you.
I'm scared. I agree with Tom. Nah, don't worry. Quite seriously, I do agree with much of what Tom said, and it's getting redundant in a particular way, but I think it's important to note that we have to deal with transit first, and what I mean by that is we have to deal with improving bus service, existing bus service in this area and throughout the county. We've got to make Montgomery County much more accessible. That's just the first thing we've got to do. The reality is BRT could be a great idea. I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done on it. I understand the questions and issues that folks have. A lot of folks in this area do not want to see dedicated lanes. But the other reality is we've got to figure out how to make the bus service that exists Ride-On and Metro more reliable, to make sure that we expand service. I was very frustrated to see those cuts to service. As somebody who's really concerned about children and family, we've got to make sure that Ride-On is accessible to all of our schools, for example. It's really important that folks have ways to get to schools, because I do agree what we don't address is the fact that most folks who are on Ride-On don't have other options. We've got to make that option excellent. Then we can really talk about how to bring on something like BRT and make it work together, because that's really the issue. How do we have a more integrated plan that's going to make sure that the county is much more accessible?
In the interest of time, I agree. Tom and what's his name? Chris.
All right.
Someone took note, right?
In the interest of time.
Okay.
I'm going to attack Chris and Tom then. Seriously though, I think the first answer begins with restoring the cuts, right? It begins with increasing service in this area. Part of it is, the answers are starting to sound very similar because I've heard similar discussions with the Purple Line. Everybody supports the Purple Line, but nobody wants to stick with a substation in their area, right? And that's what's happening with BRT right now. There's a lot of, BRT is going to take years to build. There's a lot of fighting there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen to determine what BRT really looks like. So as a community, you can determine that what BRT looks like is that there's more ride-on service on this particular corridor, and that that the dedicated lanes are not on this corridor or are in another corridor. And I think that's really what the key is. It has to be not just this neighborhood, it has to be folks from all of these different communities, especially specifically in District 5, because, you know, I've dealt with the folks who, I take Metro every day myself, so I've dealt with a lot of folks who, they just want on-time bus service, and they think the BRT might be the answer for that. It is, and it probably will be for a lot of those folks. The challenge is, we're not talking in this room to the people that are supporting BRT in their neighborhoods. We gotta have that conversation, because I guarantee you, those compromises will happen. I guarantee you, the people who want that north-south piece, they don't care what happens here. You care what happens here. So the key is, you have to stand up for what you're fighting for, but then work out compromises with the folks who are fighting for different things. So again, increase the bus service, but then work with other communities. That's the best answer.
So every 6 months, the Washington Post usually writes an article about how no one on the Metro Board of Directors takes the Metro. I think it would actually be nice if a member of the County Council took the bus or took the Metro to Rockville, and that's what I pledged to do. Quite frankly, while the conversation about BRT is ongoing and nothing has been decided, and we have that public conversation, there are a lot of things that we can do in the meantime. We do need to reinforce the public transportation infrastructure, and one of those things that we can do, that I've learned about grievances of this community from having talked to this community, is extending bus line 19 to the Forest Glen Metro. I know it used to go there, and then they stopped, and it's a cycle to the bottom, because we have a tough budgetary time. They reconfigure the bus routes to save money. It starts becoming inconvenient for people. They stop taking the bus. Then the following budget cycle, they say your ridership has declined and we're going to reduce your service more. It's a race to the bottom. We need people who take public transit, who want to invest in public transit. And so while we have the conversation about how we afford BRT, the hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, little things like spending $70,000 a year to extend bus line 19 to the Forest Glen Metro is the least we can do.
All right, we'll go ahead and pass it to, Mr. Barkley will start us off. But first we have a series of lightning round BRT questions before we leave that issue. You know that routes are proposed for both Route 29 and University, making us the most impacted neighborhood in the county when it comes to potential taking of property or taking traffic lanes away. The current specifications for the BRT would have stations 15 feet wide and 150 feet long. So with 2 routes, 2 divided highways, we might be talking 4 stations. Some office holders believe that a discussion of placing the station can be separated from the discussion of planning, routes, and service. All right, so for your first lightning round, do you believe that station siting and route planning are separate issues, yes or no? Station siting and route planning, do you believe they can be separated, yes or no? Okay. All right, due to previous road widening, there's no additional right-of-way available. Again, another lightning round. Will you support a plan that requires taking residential or commercial property in order to site stations in the Four Corners area?
Is the question specifically for Four Corners?
For Four Corners, yep. Okay. All right. And then finally, as a long-distance express service, as we've said, BRT does not really provide valuable service to close-in communities, and we would have the impacts from reductions of local bus service and helping to pay for it. But also BRT funding proposals would place an additional tax on residents in these negatively impacted yet not served by BRT communities. And that would allow the council to go above the charter limit on property tax collections. So another card, do you support the financing of BRT routes through special taxing districts as is in the current proposal to tax businesses and residents who live along the proposed BRT routes? Okay, all right, they're tough ones. We want to definitely move into, a lot of the cards have been on density and development issues, and that brings us to the White Oak Plan, which currently recommends 25 million square feet of additional development, mixed-use commercial residential, without any staging. That would give us, combined with existing development, basically the current size of Tyson's Corner. It'd be larger than any area in the county around the metro stations, twice the size of downtown Silver Spring, with all of its transit. And the White Oak Plan area is 6 miles from the nearest metro station. The way the commercial residential zoning goes, it's dealer's choice. Developers have the flexibility to decide how much is commercial, how much is residential. So, with the vision for White Oak supposed to be additional good jobs and amenities, while we already have almost as many jobs as downtown Silver Spring, we do lack retail and restaurant amenities. So, another lightning question. Does adding 25 million square feet to an already congested area that only has 2 main roads, no metro station, sits between 2 of our watersheds, it's a modest question, isn't it? Does this fit the definition of smart growth? Well, we're going to have one that you can speak to more deeply. All right. Second card question. Do you think it takes 25 million square feet of additional development to obtain better retail and restaurants? Rockville Town Center, for example, is nowhere near that amount, and yet it's located within metro state, walking distance of metro. So, do we need to develop 25 million square feet to get those needed amenities here? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. All right, so coming up to the question now. The county currently has record high office vacancy rates. Downtown Silver Spring has a 25% office vacancy rate. Almost all new projects are turning out to be residential. So, for a 2-minute question, how would you ensure that the development that occurs in White Oak really results in permanent jobs and amenities and not just more residential development, overburdening infrastructure and creating overcrowding? 2 minutes, Mr. Barkley, you get to start us off.
Wow. After all of that, right? So, we have the responsibility to deal with the land use issues. We've got to, as council members, we have got to ensure that we can push the issue of making sure that it is not simply commercial real estate. It's got to be both. It's got to be residential and commercial real estate, or commercial zoning, I should say, excuse me. I will admit to not always using the right language here. The point is, we've got to make sure that the community is represented. We understand that at the end of the day, our interest has to be represented as they develop whatever space is done, whatever is done in White Oak. And my job as a council member is to make sure that your concerns are represented when we're having the conversations about what will be built there. So I feel very comfortable that I can do that job. I feel very comfortable that I can talk to the community and talk to community members and talk to the business community to figure out what is the happy medium that needs to be developed, because that's the conversation that needs to be had.
Can you repeat the middle parts of that question, please?
Okay, how would you ensure that the development that occurs in White Oak will really result in permanent jobs and amenities and not just more residential development overburdening infrastructure and creating overcrowding?
Permanent jobs. In order to have permanent jobs, you need to have a community that can permanently sustain them. And so public safety to me would be a big part of what I would do to ensure that the businesses continue to have a comfortable environment in which they can operate. Because when you have a work pool or labor pool that's not engaged or interested in the businesses that's here, then the businesses will also become disengaged in staying here. And with the White Oak master plan and the development that's planned to go into White Oak, you have to look at the demographic of what's there in White Oak. You have a lot of black and brown children that will not be prepared to be a part of the development and the economic development and businesses that's coming there. So as a council member, I would work to see that we have individuals that will benefit from expungement type scenarios or shielding of minor misdemeanor criminal conviction type scenarios, so that the labor pool will be able to come from White Oak, giving them a stake in the game. You know, if they have buy-in, they'll be willing. The residents will be willing to support that. But as it stands right now, to have permanent jobs stay, we have an unstable community that would see a lot of fluctuation over critical time that it would take to cement the jobs and giving them the foundation and the assuredness that they have a viable location to come to. So to create an environment for permanent jobs, I would address the education and the mindsets of the individuals that will be impacted by these jobs coming to town. Letting them know that it's a benefit for them to clean up the area and clean up their acts. And that's what I'll do from the county council position, is to educate the community on the importance of having a sustainable environment for the businesses to stay here. Because we don't want them to come and then realize that we don't have the community support and then pull up chalks and leave in the middle of the stream process.
All right, if you pass the mic back up.
Well, first, I'm glad that Jeff spoke about what he spoke about, because I formed working with a lot of people to do this by myself. Started the first workforce development program in East County for the purposes of making sure that people in East County and White Oak are able to get some of the jobs that we're trying to bring here. Now, in terms of those jobs, how do we make sure they're permanent jobs and not just the construction jobs, right? So it's about outreach to the community that's supposed to be here. You know, I began my career working at a venture capital fund, working with a lot of these life sciences type businesses and cybersecurity type of businesses. And I think I left that because I wanted to do more community-oriented work. But here's a chance for me to do both, right? You elect me, you have someone who knows how to work with the life sciences community, because a lot of these people grow their businesses. And I will fight, I will work with them to bring them. I mean, we've been all over the world, actually. Literally, I went to China to find potential tenants for the space in that 25 million square feet. So I think part of it is knowing how to speak the language of those businesses and working with those businesses and attracting them here. They're being drawn here by FDA and to a lesser extent by NIH, and we want to attract those firms. Another thing I think we can do, a foreign trade zone. There are 4 foreign trade zones in Maryland right now. And basically what a foreign trade zone would allow is for more retail logistics and warehousing and laboratory space to be utilized here. Because we don't just want people working in offices, we want them to put their labs here, since they're coming here to be near FDA. And what that will allow them to do is import raw material, customs and duty free, and then work with that material in their laboratories here. And then when they leave the laboratory, when they leave the foreign trade zone, it will be paid, the duties will be paid at the rate of the finished good as opposed to all the raw materials. Essentially what it does is it makes it cheaper for there to be blue collar warehousing and logistics jobs here. Finally, I think we got to get those people, we need down payment assistance programs to encourage the new workers to actually live in the existing housing stock we have. One of the problems we have in those neighborhoods is a lot of those houses are rented, so we need more homeowners in that space so they have shorter commutes that will also reduce congestion.
White Oak is important. It's right up the road. And East County is in need of amenities. It's been starving for amenities for years, which is why when Tech Road opened and there was a Chick-fil-A and a Panera, everyone went gaga for it because they'd literally been starving for years. We can do better than that. I believe what will come to White Oak when those decisions are ultimately being made will be better. And for me, quite frankly, it's not about food or amenities, it's about economic justice. Because just north of White Oak, we have some of the largest pockets of poverty in Montgomery County, and they need jobs. And we're talking about transportation. I take the Z8, Z6 bus all the time, and I see those residents coming down the bus line, passing 4 corners because the buses are full, and we need to bring more jobs to them. And not only do we bring more jobs to communities that need them, but we expand our tax base. And as Terrell just said, the county executive last year went to China with a big delegation, and they met with pharmaceutical manufacturers, medical device makers who want to come to our community because of our proximity to the FDA, the one and only FDA, where all of their products are ultimately approved. So we're sitting in this unique situation that we need to take advantage of. And when you take a few layers beyond that, we look at the regulatory system here in Montgomery County, and we need to change it. Which is why some of you may have read the Washington Post op-ed I wrote about a week and a half ago, calling for an end to Montgomery County's liquor monopoly. And that's for restaurants and small businesses, so that they can have the options of using other distributors, so that they can ultimately open up more restaurants. Red Maple's owner, Mr. Zhang, supports the proposal so that he can open up more restaurants. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We don't have enough time here. I'd love to talk to you about more ways to encourage economic development. I say this as a good progressive because the only way we will be able to provide money for transportation, education, and HHS is if we increase the tax base.
Well, this calls for a long answer, and there's not time for one, and many things have been said. But I think the first thing is there's not a community consensus at all on what we want in White Oak. If you ask 10 people, in 10 important institutional stakeholders, you get 10 different answers. I do think we need to be asking questions about what types of jobs we want to create. You said permanent jobs, but what types of permanent jobs? They shouldn't just be restaurant and hotel jobs like we have up there now. They really need to be living wage jobs where you can feed a family and you can buy a home, not just retail, jobs like that. Second, we need a requirement for commercial development. CR, doesn't come with one. We need to make sure we're creating a commercial space, not just a residential space. We need a requirement for enterprise zoning if we want businesses to really be required to be there. We need to go slow on all this. There's no rush. We need to do it in a way that encourages and supports vigorous community input. And we need to really coordinate with our private sector. The planning board certainly doesn't do that very often. The county council doesn't do that enough. They don't do it in conjunction with the administration's Department of Economic Development, certainly not with the state's DBED, the Department of Business and Economic Development. We don't coordinate enough with the Department of General Services for the feds. We didn't compete with the FBI because supposedly we don't have room in Montgomery County. When I was at the Consumer Product Safety Commission, we had a lot of pressure to move out of Bethesda into Prince George's County, and nobody at the county level or the federal government level was really helping us stay right here in Montgomery County. I had to set up meetings with Chris Van Holla and others to make sure we were on their radar screen so we could stay in Bethesda when we had DGS pressure pushing us out of Montgomery County. And finally, we don't need to move forward on any of this stuff until there's a commitment to have the infrastructure in place to support it, both the schools and the parks and the transit to get people where they need to go. And we need to have as much of that possible paid for by developers like they do in Virginia. Thank you.
Let me say that because we have a lot of wonderful questions from the audience and time is really fleeting, let me ask all of you for your cards. If we send you, say, 5 or 6 good questions that we didn't have time for tonight by email, would you respond to them so that we can circulate it among our listservs? Okay. All right. So, my next question is for the audience. We're sort of close to the witching hour. We have another question that we can ask, where we can have some more time for them to actually meet informally and mingle. So let me see a show of hands. Who would like one more question? Okay, I think that looks like a big vote for networking. Let me also give an opportunity for folks that are here who are running for other positions just now to stand up and say who they are. Here we have Alan?
Hi, everybody. Alan Bowser. I'm a candidate for clerk of the court in the June 24th primary. I'd like your support. Visit my website, alanbowser.net. Thank you.
Anybody else that I haven't spotted? Yes.
Dan Robinson, I'm running in District 20 for a delegate. I'm running as a green, so I won't be on the, oh.
Yeah, it's still running.
I'm running as a green, so I won't be on the Democratic primary ballot, but I will be on the November ballot.
And I'm Caroline here for Beth Daly, who's running for, Beth Daly's running for county council at large. She's at another forum in another part of the county. So.
All right, well, I want to say thank you again for candidates.
We have more here. I'll come to you.
Hi, my name is Anjali Reed-Buchan. I'm running for comptroller for the state of Maryland, and it is, thank you, but it is a new political party. It's called the Service Party, and it needs 10,000 signatures to get ballot access. So you won't actually see my name on the ballot if we don't get those signatures. If you want to sign, I have petitions here you can take home with you. And thank you all for coming. Anjali Reed-Buchan.
All right, well, thanks again.
Will Jawando, running for District 20 delegate. I live in White Oak, so I wish I could have answered that question. But if you want to know more about me, we have our team here to pass these out. Grew up here, I'm an attorney, work mostly in education and civil rights issues, and look forward to getting to know those of you who I don't know. So thank you very much.
Okay.
And hi everyone, my name is Darian Unger. I'm running for state delegate here in District 20. I'm a neighbor, I'm an environmental engineer and a professor at Howard University. And I'm also a firefighter, and I work out at the station right here next to the high school. So this is my first due area, and I look forward to meeting those of you who I haven't met here. Thanks.
All right, that's it for candidates? Okay. Thank everybody for your attention and time, and